It's become common knowledge now that trauma lives in the body. The famous book by Van der Kolk, The Body Keeps the Score, almost a Bible in the field of trauma, has really allowed us to understand that trauma is not something that lives in the past as a memory, but lives in the present as a neurological change to the way in which our brains function. At some level, trauma is a memory, but that memory is a bunch of neurons that fire in hyperactive ways right now in my brain. This hyperfiring in my brain has the power to dysregulate my entire emotional system, making me fight or run away in ways that often seem out of proportion to most others around me. But to say that trauma lives in my body is, in my humble opinion, not completely true. Trauma is a present reality, but it does not live in my body alone, but in the group of people who maintain secrecy over both the memory that troubles me as well as all that memory is doing to me right now. If you are new to trauma or an old-timer of this wild horse, you must understand this. Trauma cannot survive the experience of being socially acknowledged and socially processed. Why, you may ask? Because the emotional dysregulation trauma is causing me will be changed, or better, transformed, once it is acknowledged and dealt with collectively. Whether that collective is my family, my neighborhood, my society, my culture, my nation, it doesn't matter. Emotional regulation in my own body will change the moment my secret is out and acknowledged by you. Here is an example. One of my dearest male friends was raped repeatedly by a friend of the family when he was 7 years old. Although his family found out within a few months of the first incidents and the events stopped, until the age of 30, my friend carried those memories of the actual event all alone. No one in the family could talk about it anymore, and he certainly felt he needed to hide the ugly details. These ugly details dysregulated him for years, and he fell into drugs and addictions of different kinds for many years. Trauma lived in his body as a group of memories detailed enough to undermine his sense of agency in the world, his sense of worth, his sense of existing as a man. But this group of detailed memories lived in his body alone only because they could not be shared with others. When finally, at the age of 30, my dear friend began to talk about these inconvenient truths back to his family and close friends, the family's emotional ties began to tremble and shake for a little while. Everyone was affected, and for a few months, the air was tense with rage, deep sadness, fear and guilt, shame and despair. However, in these months of difficulty, all of the members of this family were now effectively processing the ugly details. My friend, for the first time, began to co-regulate his own individual trauma with other important people in his life. His trauma began to live in the body of each individual in the family. The secrecy was gone. The deep, dramatic effects these ugly details were having on his body and mind for decades began slowly to fade away. My dear friend began to recuperate trust in himself, trust in his capacity to feel like a man without expressing unusual levels of sexuality. He began to be allowed to come back home to his own adobe. His inner house, now clear of the ugly details, could finally be a place of rest for his soul. Sure, there were still dirty corners to clear up, but most areas became habitable. So trauma lives in your body to the extent that your social group has ostracized the ugly details. What and why this is will be the topic of another video, but for now, remember this: your trauma, their secrecy. That secrecy, it is now your mission to break, because those who are in denial will never do it for you. Good luck with this one. Look after your heart.